Hi, how are you, everyone? Thank you for being here. Thank you for our panelists. Thank you all. Thank you, the Doha Forum, for inviting COMEXI to co-organize this panel on nearshoring and friendshoring, changing priorities in global trade. I will make a quick introduction, then I will introduce our distinguished panelists, and we will start the discussion. Nearshoring, the real discussions we must have. In this discussion, a significant shortfall has been the lack of a clear definition of what nearshoring is and what is not. Nearshoring, friendshoring, or reshoring is the process of returning productions change to North America, which, due to China's opening to the world, especially after its entry into the World Trade Organization in 2001, left Mexico, the US, and other countries to settle in the Asian giant due to labor cost advantages. This return is mainly due to the trade war between the US and China, which involves the imposition of tariffs on certain Chinese imports and retaliatory measures from China. What should be considered nearshoring and where there is a great opportunity is in sectors affected by the tariffs imposed by the US on China. These opportunities are mainly found in the intermediate parts of value chain, such as crucial components for various production processes that in recent years have been made almost exclusively in China. This includes electronic components from microchip to less complex inputs and all types of electronic equipment. This is in addition to opportunities in light industry, such as textiles and relocations in other industries where Mexico, Germany, Rwanda, or Bangladesh are already successful. Even in this scenario, there are significant obstacles, especially access to mineral raw materials, which in the near future must come from China. There are various serious analyses on this matter, and all estimate that, and let me refer particularly to my country, Mexico, that if Mexico is successful in capturing this opportunity, we could add between zero point 0.8 and 1.5 additional points to the GDP in the long term, which could be reflected in a significant premium for skilled labor in the country. Achieving this implies having an industrial policy focused on the sectors with the most opportunity and creating the conditions to attract those investments. But this will not happen in a vacuum. It is essential to have an active policy in this sense. We have with us today distinguished panelists from different countries and continents to talk about this complex situation from their own perspective. The shift in industrial policies towards nearshoring, friendshoring, derisking, decoupling, in response to supply chain disruptions and geopolitical tensions, represent a significant change in the global trade landscape. Will these policies limit trade or will they ensure stable global supply chain? This is how we will start our conversation. And let me just introduce our panelists. His Excellency Vincent Biruta, Minister of Foreign Affairs and International Cooperation from Rwanda. Prior to his appointment in November 2019, Minister Biruta served as Minister of Environment from 2017, Minister of Natural Resources from 2014, and Minister of Education from 2011. He also held the position of President of the Rwandan Senate from 2003 to 2011. He served as the president of the National Transition Assembly from January 2000 to August 2003, Minister of Public Works, Transport and Communication from 1999 to 2000, and Minister of Health from 97 to 99. Dr. A.K. Abdul Momen, serving as the Foreign Minister of Bangladesh, has a distinguished career in diplomacy and international relations. He served as the Bangladesh ambassador and permanent representative to the United Nations from 2009 to 2015. After retiring from his role at the UN, Dr. Momen continued his contributions to public service and academia, joining the faculty at the American International University of Bangladesh and serving in various other capacities in social and economic organizations. Niels Annen. Niels Annen is a German politician who has been serving as parliamentary state secretary in the Federal Ministry for Economic Cooperation and Development in the coalition government of Chancellor Olaf Scholz since 2021. He served as Minister of State at the Federal Foreign Office from 2018 to 2021 in the government of Chancellor Angela Merkel. Mr. Annen has served as member of the German Bundestag from 2005 to 2009 and since 2013. As a longtime member of the Committee on Foreign Affairs, Annen established himself as a foreign policy expert, focusing largely on the German engagement in Afghanistan and the Middle East. As a Spanish speaker, he's also well served in the history and politics of Latin and Central America. Last but not least, Claudia Avila Connelly, Director General of Customs, Attention and International Affairs at the National Customs Agency of Mexico. Serves as General Director of Customs Services and International Affairs. She previously served as advisor at the Coordination Office to the Secretary of Finance from the Mexican federal government. For more than 16 years, she led the Mexican Association of Private Industrial Parks, representing the largest real estate developers in Mexico. In 2020, she was part of the 100 most powerful women in business by Expansion magazine in Mexico. She has also been Secretary of Economic Development in the state of Hidalgo and Deputy Trade Commissioner of Mexico in Stockholm, Sweden, and in Toronto, Canada, participating in the promotion of the North American Free Trade Agreement, NAFTA, today USMCA. So, which one wants to start with the general one question about nearshoring, friendshoring, ally shoring? Ladies first.
Hola. Yeah. Well, this is a topic that as I've been working for a long time, and for me, nearshoring is foreign direct investment, but with a new strong determinant because global investors, global multinational companies are always looking for locations where they can find cheap labor force apart from infrastructure, suppliers. And that was good before in the 90s when we started to see globalization in the world. But most recently, you remember in 2012, where Japan suffered a tsunami, and some companies, especially from auto parts, need to close. So they interrupted the global supply chains for the automotive industry. And later we had the trade war between the US and China, and most recently, the pandemics, which closed the supply chains, which interrupted the global supply chains. So now global companies or multinational companies looking for new sites for opening up new operations in different countries are no, not only finding cheap labor force to increase their margins, but also the risk. Risk is a new important factor for FDI. So they need to have their suppliers close by in order to not to have uncertainty on supplying. So for me, nearshoring is to have suppliers close by in order to have the certainty to continue the production of the operations. And nearshoring can be in any country that has anchor companies and that needs their suppliers close by. Now, that is vicinity, but also when you talk about friendshoring or ally shoring regarding alliances, it means that no risk, not only for interruption of supply chains, but also for geopolitical reasons that I need to have my suppliers being secure that I will have continuity on the business. So that's why in Mexico we say shoring because for Mexico applies the nearshoring, the friendshoring, the ally shoring. So that's why Mexico is being a champion on this near shoring as a new trend in the global economic environment in the world.
Thank you, Claudia. Moving to other country, another continent.
Okay. Let me say that the disruption of supply chain and the competition between bigger economies has caused African economies to suffer more from the global increase in prices. And this has been exacerbated by the war in Ukraine, and that led African countries to just to focus on local production and to sourcing from the region. And this is likely to strengthen our regional economic communities. And it is actually happening because, for example, for the East African community where Rwanda belongs, we have seen that the increase of supply from this regional bloc has increased from 5.8 million in 2013 to 10.9 million US dollars in 2022. And with the tools which are being put in place on the continent, like the African Continental Free Trade Area, which brings together 55 countries of the continent, and where we have started trading under that framework, it is likely that Africa is going to start sourcing from African countries, and that framework is also going to help in becoming for Africa to become a source of supply for the European continent. And there are other initiatives which show that this will happen. One of those initiatives is the critical raw materials initiative of the European Union. And this will lead to Africa adding value to the minerals on the continent before exporting them. There are initiatives in other sectors like the textile sector, the agricultural sector, and the pharmaceutical sector as well. So it is happening, and Africa could benefit from this situation. And we just need to invest in what we need to for us to be able to trade with neighboring continents, mainly Europe, by just addressing the issue of skills which are needed to work on the regulatory framework and also to invest in infrastructures both for communication and for logistics. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Your Excellency. And now from Africa to Asia, Your Excellency.
Thank you. It's already on. Oh, it's on. Thank you. Thank you for asking me to talk to you. Let me tell you this. I have been a teacher over half a quarter century, mostly in USA. And I had thousands of students in the USA. And I taught in the in the School of Economics and Business. I never taught any of my students nearshoring, friendshoring, these concepts. We talk about free trade. We talk about, and I have been an instrument in the FTA between USA and Canada. At the time I was teaching in Boston, and I'm one of the instrument on those days. But that not because of nearshoring. That was because on those days, almost 72 to 75% exports of Canada used to come to USA. And therefore, we thought it would be much easier if we have free trade agreement between US and Canada. And it worked out very well, both for US and Canada. Then, of course, it's extended beyond. Now, this concept, the new concept, we have been teaching our students that free trade is great for the whole consumers of the world and for help improving the productivity and efficiency. These are the gospel of words we have been teaching. Free trade is better than any other trade. But now a new innovative concept came. Free trade is good because you can outsource your products to another country or another place at a very competitive price. For example, I come from Bangladesh. We are a list country, we're the largest list country. And again, we are basically, among all the LDCs, we are an industrial country. Our 85% income comes from garment and apparel sector. So we are, doing well. Who are our buyers? They are buyers all distance away from Bangladesh. Buyers are USA, the European Union, they are our major buyers, not our neighbor like India or neighbor like Thailand or Bhutan or Nepal. Why the USA is buying? Because we provide them these products at a affordable price, at a reduced price, and also on time and quality products. That's why Europeans and the Americans are buying. We export almost $60 billion worth of our garments, second largest garment exporter in the world. The whole concept developed not on the basis of nearshoring or friendshoring, it's because of, profit margin. The companies, private companies, they buy it where they get, good deal to achieve greater profit, and consumers are happy. Consumers are happy because they can get the product at a. That's the concept in business, that we would like to provide goods and services at the optimal price and you know efficiency. But if you distort it with the newer concept of nearshoring and friendshoring, these could be the political terms. And I'm not sure whether they should fly in the real world. They can fly for a short period, an emergency situation. You don't like some country, so you have to punish them. So you don't buy from them, you buy someone else. But it might in the process will cost, more for the consumers. So the consumers will be the losers. If we look into this and friend sharing, you don't like certain country, so you don't buy from them. This could go both for trade and investment. You invest another country because they have some, the advantages on certain invest, the God-given best, some endowments. That's why you go there. But if you ignore that, then in that case, my reading is the cost will increase and the global community, particularly the consumer, even the business, they will suffer. So it could run for a short period, these newer concepts. But for the longer term, for the global good, these sort of things will not last, will not be very effective. Our main objective is to help improve the living and this life of people all across the world. If this is our goal, then this concept does not go along with that. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Your Excellency, and you poses a good dilemma about these kind of trends, nearshoring, friendshoring, are limiting trade. But let me, before go to that, Niels, please.
Thank you. And thank you very much for including me on the panel. I maybe can just start where you, Minister, just concluded. Germany has been maybe one of the countries that most believed in that idea that you, Minister, teach about or discussed with your students about free trade and the benefits of free trade. Um, our economy is heavily relying on exports, and we have been a champion of the principle of free trade for decades. So I would say, yes, what you just said basically reflects the interest also of my country. However, the political situation is changing. And that's what I believe we need to have an honest discussion about. Because what we are seeing is multiple disruptions in the supply chains. So I want to share with you as a politician my experience over some years in politics now. When I started in parliament, I would say the vast majority of German companies had one expectation towards their government, our government, which was to guarantee free trade and please don't intervene too much into free trade and business operations. So they invested a lot abroad, especially in China. So now we have geopolitical tensions. We have what has been mentioned, a kind of trade war between China and the US. The Chinese policies and politics are changing, causing concerns. We have Russia's invasion on Ukraine, and which had dramatic effect, especially on our energy relations. They cut the gas supplies, as you all know. Um, and trade, which was never, from my point of view, apolitical, but has become as politicized as never before. So there's that sense that the supply chain is not as secure and safe anymore. So they're looking at their government to make sure that we secure the supply chain in a way. And I think there's a reckoning that we maybe have been relying too much on certain countries in our trade relation. And I don't know if it's nearshoring or friendshoring, but it's certainly a policy of diversification. So that's one aspect. Then there's another aspect where I'm speaking as a representative of the German Ministry for Development Cooperation. That is that I think we need to take into account that maybe most of our citizens like good and cheap products, but increasingly there are citizens, and I welcome that, who also want to make sure that the products they buy have been produced under good labor standards, environmental standards, etc. That is also affecting supply chains and the way we are managing that. Um, uh, and we need to balance that with our policy not to turn into a new era of protectionism, but that's an aspect that needs to be discussed. I am absolutely convinced about that. And then the third aspect, which has also to do, I believe, with what the minister said about the question of adding value in the region where things are being supplied. That was undervalued, I believe, in the German and in the European policies. And if you look where Chancellor Scholz has been traveling to, which countries he has been visiting, where we are trying to invest also in the idea of adding value in the very region, which is a diversion and a fundamental shift away from the standard operating procedure of the northern industrialized countries. That's maybe the most significant change. Um, and I don't think that we have a blueprint for what is happening, but we need to make sure that it's not coming to a disruption, to a new era of protectionism, because that would make prices rise, would reduce profitability, and will lead to what you, Minister, said, that especially I think many African countries are already suffering because of geopolitical tensions, will not be on the winning side. We have a mutual responsibility for that. So I don't, I haven't familiarized myself, with the terms that we are discussing here, but there's certainly something very fundamental going on right now. So I very much welcome the opportunity to discuss these issues with you.
Yeah, the discussion here. Okay, thank you. Well, continuing with this discussion, I would say there are three factors to consider on this new trend about nearshoring. One is to consider the new consumption patterns. We as consumers are getting used to have the product 24 hours, at least from the click when we do the order online to the talk when we receive the package. So we just want to get our product um, at home, but we don't really care about what's happening behind all the last mile and all the logistics, and especially when it comes to an imported goods. So that's one thing that pushes companies to have certainty on the production line, including supplying chains. The second factor I would say is that worldwide there are new factors for wars. Before, maybe wars were for controlling territories or for who has the most powerful weapons. But now there is a new war trend, which is who owns the basic minerals. We are talking about the lithium, we are talking about the technology, who owns the intermediate goods for manufacturing. So that's another factor that pushes not only companies but also governments to be certain on the supplying factor. And third one is the um, the prices are going down and down and down. I remember when I was a child, I had to keep my sweater all the elementary school, otherwise my mother would be upset. Now we have a disposable clothing. Everything is disposable. Consumers want cheaper and cheaper, so this makes the companies being more pressed on profit margins. So besides looking for places to that offers cheap labor force, they also need market access. That's why free trade agreements are being important. And I believe that some of the FDI that is coming to Mexico, it is not only because of having suppliers close by, but also because the new USMCA before NAFTA implies a higher national content. So certain companies are obligated to be in the Mexican territory in order to have access to the USMCA benefits. But as I said, nearshoring is not only Mexico, US. I remember some months ago that Germany announced a big new investment from Intel to have chips producing in Germany, precisely to have the security of having the chips um, at home, because I mean, not most, all the products that needs a screen, they need a chip. So without a chip, we cannot survive in this modern world. But my question is, just one thing. Okay, governments are trying to attract new foreign direct investment, big companies. But my question is, what about small and medium companies? We need also to consider them integrated in these global supply chains. Don't forget that these small and medium-sized companies are the ones that create more jobs. So that's the challenge for the governments.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Your Excellency.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Um, I would agree with Neil Annan, Germany, that we need to have honest discussion. More so, this could be a good debate in Germany, more so because you have been too much dependent on energy supply on Russia. But since Ukraine war, you have difficulty. Um, but that's why in our own policy, we always like to have diversified investment, diversified portfolio, diversified trade relationship, so that we don't depend on only one single country supply or single country. Yeah. Now, as a teacher of economics, we have been teaching people about country endowments. We are talking about comparative advantage, competitive advantage, and in this world of globalization, global world, we are also very mindful of transaction cost, transport cost, labor cost, and return on investment, ROI. So in business world, we always more concerned about return on investment. And these narrow political strategies of nearshoring, friendship shoring may not give us the optimum ROI. So in the long run, this is not going to work. It could be working in specific country condition, but not across the globe. And that's my personal reading. Being a teacher, that's my personal reading. Uh, but for politics, it could play a role for a short period of time during the emergencies. Maybe because of the emergencies of these wars, these are becoming more focused. But in the long run, we look forward. As I said, we look for the global good. We look forward to the well-being of the global people and global consumers, and that is only so far I understand that can be done a more fair trade, not a, what should I concoct it and distorted, the global trade regime. Thank you.
I'm agree with you, Minister. Those are more topics for the long term is the free trade. No doubt about that. Those nearshoring, friendshoring, island shoring, and other shorings are just a response to geopolitical situation that we are living, I think. Minister, please.
Yes, I just want to say that as a government, I would prioritize investment in local production first and in supply chain diversification. And I am tempted to say that nearshoring makes more sense to me than friendshoring because geographical proximity is permanent, while friendship is not. So that's what I wanted to add to what I had already stated. Thank you.
Thank you, Minister. Following this, and maybe just yes, no, decoupling or derisking? That is the word right now. Niels?
Well, I think we shouldn't believe that decoupling, and I mean, if you talk about decoupling, it's decoupling with China, right? I don't think for a minute that that would work um, because of the enormous Chinese capacity, because of the enormous investment that countries like Germany and others made in China, because of the impact for the global economy. So decoupling, think about it, what it would mean also in terms of politics. If that would be the concept, I don't think would be realistic, and the consequences would be far-reaching. But have we been maybe too much depending on the Chinese market? I would say yes. And we want to do business with China. We want to continue to do business. I don't know a single country that don't want to do that. By the way, um, even during the very tense moments that we saw in the last years between the US and China, American companies did not stop to invest in the Chinese market. All the contrary, in some sectors, even more so. But we need to diversify. And that's a little bit the lesson that we learned from what happened with the Russian invasion on Ukraine and the decision to cut energy supplies to Germany. Minister, as you mentioned, that we have been able to overcome the crisis and substitute the Russian natural gas. But of course, it comes at a price. So I think that's also one of the reasons why we are now supporting investments like Intel to Germany, which is a record investment, which also shows that also a country with, high wages and a developed economy can be attractive for those kinds of investments. That was against the orthodoxy a couple of years ago. So a lot is happening, and it depends a lot on the political stewardship to manage these processes in close cooperation, I think, with the business sector, um, with um, with our partners around the world. And I do believe that it's true what Minister Biruta here said, that if you base your economic strategy on a concept of friendship, that's a bit risky. We believe in our friendships and we believe they last, but they do not always do that. So, so I believe we have underestimated the importance and also the potential of the African market, which, if I look at the dynamics in Africa in terms of economic growth, in terms of population growth, um, that is something where we both can benefit. And German Development Cooperation is more and more focusing also on working with our partners and doing just what the minister said, to add value to the local supply chain. And that would make our trade relation more reliable. It will be an investment in building trust. And it's not directed against anybody. I believe that's very important to mention as well.
Thank you.
Well, I would like to comment on the book of Shannon O'Neill, The Myth of globalization. She says that actually globalization didn't exist. She has the theory that worldwide, in the 90s, the world started to distribute it among three big factories: Europe, uh, and Asia, and North America. And from that theory, she says that countries are linked to the largest economy in those three factories. And since then, they started to configure the regional supply chains. That doesn't mean that countries couldn't supply from other areas. But in the case of Mexico, for instance, we are attached, we like it or not, to the North American big factory because of NAFTA to the USMCA. We are attached, for instance, our great automotive industry, aerospace, medical equipment, but we are attached from factories and also from suppliers with Canada and the US. So that doesn't allow us to think about going somewhere. I mean, we supply from China, and actually 70% of our imports from China are intermediate goods. But it's maybe the same with Europe and with cheap labor force countries that are close by, like North Africa or East Europe, and the same with China and the rest of the countries. This is a fact. It's not interpretation. I mean, if we see the figures on FDI, this is the configuration worldwide. The question is this going to continue, or is it possible the diversification of supplying change? That's the question. But I think that the geography is a big part of this issue, no?
Thank you, Claudia.
Thank you. Thank you again. I think in the world of in the realm of international relations, no one is a perpetual enemy, or no one is a lifelong friend. It changes from time to time. In this early 70s, US and China became great friends. And now they're enemies because of the economic and other reasons. But maybe after 20 years, things might change. But for this short-term phenomenon, should not disturb the basics of economics, which I said we should go back to basics in developing our supply chain. If we don't do that, there could be social cost, there could be political cost, and we may disturb the established supply chain that we have. Over the last so many years, we have been arguing either to get then WTO to develop a rule-based system that is non-discriminatory, that is, more, you know, that is aimed at help improving the lot of the global people. If we disrupt that process, we may end up with a lot of chaos. And in the process, the established supply chain will be destroyed, and that may harm the global leader community. And that's the way I look at it. So I feel that, for a specific country, for a specific period, you can think of nearshoring, friendshoring. Nearshoring may be much better than the friendshoring. Among these two, I would go more for nearshoring rather than friendshoring. But friendshoring is subjective. It's not based economic principles and basics. But nearshoring have some elements of economic comparative advantage. So, given all those things, I think these new innovations and concept is going to face some a test of time, and I still look forward to the old. I'm an old guy, so naturally I still believe in free, the free media, free trade, and all the free. We must not create barriers. We should break down these walls, these barriers, and create a more sustainable world of peace and stability. Thank you.
Thank you, sir. Minister, please.
Yes, on derisking and decoupling, I want to say that there are mainly two factors which will influence the market. It is the price and the quality of the goods. And it is normal for any party, any government to risk, to take measures, strategies to try to reduce various risks, be it political or economic. It is normal. And one of the strategy is about diversification of the supply chain. Decoupling, if it is about just diversifying or in order to reduce the dependency on one or the other supplier, I would be careful, and I would say that as a government, you just have to have a plan B and keep asking yourself, what if this supplier is not able to supply me? But not just to diversify in for the sake of having many suppliers if you don't consider that the aspect of the quality of the goods and the price. But to have a plan B, just keep thinking about what to do, what should I do, what will I do if this supplier is not able to supply me for a reason or another. So that what I think about the risking and the decoupling.
Thank you very much, sir. Now we open the floor if there is any questions. Yeah, the guy at the back, please.
Thank you very much for this highly qualified panel. I have a question that is addressed to potentially any of you in regards to global trade and financial or legal sovereignty. In a nutshell, we've been seeing that lots of investment arbitration cases have been triggered against several nations, Mexico, for instance, or even Bangladesh, targeting basically policies, economic policies enacted by your sovereign governments. So my question is simple. Do you consider that global trade and international business instruments are a threat to your political sovereignty and your political agendas, respectively? Thank you.
Well, I try to respond to this. Let me see if I understood you. For instance, the U.S. Has created the chips law and the inflation act. That's what you mean about the local or national policies as incentives that can make the competition unfair among companies from other different countries.
Actual investment treaties existing between, for instance, foreign companies investing in Mexico.
Que se afectan
Los acuerdos de protección, ¿no? If they, your question, if they are working already, I mean, if they're
que si afectan, que si son una amenaza para la soberanía
yeah,
nacional.
yeah. I don't think they affect the sovereignty because, on the contrary, I believe that they protect investors, foreign investors in a local country, in order not to face any disruption on legal issues on the national country where they are located. So I think they protect, and that's the mutual agreement among countries in order to have a fair treatment between national companies and foreign companies. I would say that the question might be whether they are really working or not, or if they are only there, but in practice, countries don't respect the rights of foreign companies. I believe that normally they do work properly. Don't you think so?
You want to answer, or we move to other questions?
No, I was just 1 minute that in the real world, whether it is politics or in business, we do compromise our sovereignty. We do, regulate. We are being regulated by so many international agencies. In the process, we do compromise our sovereignty. Thank you.
Here.
Very much for an excellent panel. My question is to Minister Baruta. You mentioned critical minerals earlier, and you also mentioned the fact that you had suffered as a result of US-China competition and also a preference for nearshoring rather than friendshoring. Neither Europe and China are able to nearshore the critical minerals required to deliver the energy transition and must look for friends. How do you see the competition for preferential access in Africa for critical minerals playing out from the choices that you may be made to make in the next 10, 15 years?
I'm not sure I have got the question properly, but China and West have been competing, and for good reasons, on the African continent. And I stated earlier that there is that geographical proximity between Africa and Europe, and that there are tools which are in place today for us to be able to benefit from the nearshoring policies which are coming up. And one of the examples I mentioned is the Critical Raw Materials Initiative, which was initiated by the European Union. And Rwanda is one of those countries which have been negotiating an agreement on critical raw materials initiative. And we believe that this will benefit our continent and specifically my country when we'll be able to extract minerals from our countries and be able to add value to those minerals in our countries and the continent before eventually exporting them. And I believe that at some point we'll be able to reach the final products from these minerals. So that is an example I gave to show that nearshoring is possible and that we just need to put in place the right conditions for us to be able to benefit from this situation. And one of those conditions related to the creation of the skills we need on the continent, and also to put in place those incentives related to, among others, to African Continental Free Trade Area Agreement we have adopted on the continent.
Thank you. We have a little bit more than 3 minutes, so we can take two more questions in a row. 1 and 2, please.
I was intrigued that none of you mentioned WTO. The reason we have this problem, whatever you call it, weaponization of everything by major trading powers, market access, managed trade, resources, monopoly over rare earths, and using them as a weapon of coercion against countries. Does it signal the failure of WTO? Countries that signed on to WTO did not abide by the terms and uh, whatever they agreed to. Do we need to go back to WTO, reform WTO, or this rising tide of protectionism, tariffs? These are mainly because, of course, geopolitics cannot be, divorced from geoeconomics. Politics and economics are closely interlinked. They cannot be separated. You cannot have comparative advantage without taking into account political factors. So I wanted some views on the future of WTO from speakers.
Thank you. The last one there, please. So, and then we can ask. And we have 2 minutes. It's clicking here.
Oh, okay. I'll try to be brief, but thanks for a very insightful panel. I have a question for the Mexicans about the so-called poison pill clause in USMCA TMAC, which basically effectively prohibits Mexico from having a trade agreement with China or joining one that China is part of. So I take Minister Moment's point that friendships can change, but it seems like Mexico is contractually inhibited from being more friends with China. How do you experience that?
Quickly, no,
I'm the moderator, not from Mexico. No.
no, I mean we are a sovereign country and we can deal with any country. There is no prohibition in the USMCA. In fact, China is our third trade partner country, and if you see the foreign trade statistics, it's growing every time. Regarding WTO, I think that that is the typical dilemma between multilateralism, which is slower than bilateralism. No, it's a topic for a new panel. I'm sorry, the timing.
Quick
Yeah,
response.
indeed, for a new panel, but just a brief remark with regard to WTO. I I have a lot of notes here with making reference to WTO. I can show you later. I was prepared to address the issue, but honestly, I think the UN system in general is under severe pressure. We heard that from the Secretary General. And I think also WTO contributed to the debate which we are having here with their own, analysis and papers and ideas. We believe in that system. But the reality is that it has not been as functional as it should be. And that's why, in some cases, also European countries are negotiating trade agreements, with other trade blocs. That's part of the reality. But we would like to reshore, in a way, that capacities to WTO. But the political situation, I think, doesn't allow us just to rely on one organization. So we need to do both. And we try to include standards of the WTO in the trade agreement that the European Union, it's not a national case, as you know, that the European Union is negotiating.
Second flag.
Yes, 2 seconds. Thank you, moderator Nathan Cole. You did not eat us up, but you completed it on time. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thank you, all of you, for being here. Yeah, sure. And when you see the